Hi, I'm Jason Odell, and today I want to talk about one of my favorite filters for landscape photography, and that's the Singh-Ray Vari-N-Duo filter and its cousin, the Vari-N-D. I use the Vari-N-Duo because it incorporates a combination of a variable solid neutral density filter and a polarizing filter. You can also get it without the polarizing filter. That's the Vari-N-D. You want to use a filter like this when you want to slow down the shutter speed in your camera. And what's so cool about Singh-Ray's particular filter is that it starts off at about 2 2/3 stops of neutral density filters that will cut the light by 2 1/3, 2 2/3 stops. And by simply turning the front of the filter, you can dial in 8 stops of filtration. So this will cut the light coming into your camera by 8 stops. On top of that, you can also rotate the entire filter to get a polarizing effect. Now, where would you want to use this filter? You'll use it a lot of times on streams, waterfalls, things like that, where you want to have a really slow shutter speed to blur motion, to blur the water, to the point where you can get incredibly long exposures, maybe even 10, 15, or even 30 seconds. I like the polarizer in the Vari-N-Duo because it adds in the ability to cut glare off of things like leaves. And if you're in a stream, down by the stream on an overcast day, which is great for shooting streams, you're going to get a lot of glare coming off the leaves. So this polarizer is going to cut the glare coming off the leaves and make those green leaves really pop out. So let me show you how you can use this filter in practice when you're out in the field, because it's not the easiest thing to just start using if you're not sure what you're doing. Alright, now that I've placed the filter onto my 24 to 70 millimeter lens, what I'm going to do is first set up my camera the right way. So I'm going to choose the fixed ISO. That's usually going to be your slowest ISO possible. So if your camera goes down to 200 or 100, you're going to set it at the base or the lowest possible ISO. Sometimes you may even need to set it to the lower settings. I'm going to put my camera into mirror lockup mode. And normally I'm going to use a cable release when I'm using this filter because, again, I don't want any kind of camera shake to happen when I'm pressing the shutter down. The other thing I want to do is make sure that I'm not using any kind of automatic white balance setting. So I usually will dial in daylight white balance if I'm outside. The reason for that is that with auto white balance and dark filters like this, you can get some strange color shifts in the image. So I'm going to set as many things manually as possible. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my camera into manual exposure mode. Okay, and then I'm going to dial in the exposure setting that I want. So let's say I want to get a really long 15-second exposure at f16. I'm going to just dial this in manually, and I'm going to have the Vari-N-Duo filter set to its minimum neutral density setting. So this is about 2 2/3 stops of neutral density. The reason for this is that if I have it closed down, the viewfinder becomes dark. I can't autofocus, I can't compose my scene, etc. So I'm going to compose with the filter set at its minimum setting. I'm also then going to dial in, by rotating this entire filter, I can dial in the polarization effect. So if I need to polarize the scene using the polarizer, I just turn the entire filter to do that. So that's all set up. I'm ready to go. I've got my exposure that I set the way I want it. I will close the rear viewfinder so that no light comes in through the back of the camera, which can fool your meter. And I'm set to 15 seconds at f16. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the camera's meter, the needle right here, the little dial, and I'm going to watch it as I turn the variable neutral density ring. So I'm going to start turning this ring to the right, or to the left, I should say. And I'm going to just watch until the needle matches 0 right there. Okay? And what you can see is that I'm pretty close to being exactly metered. Now you might have some hot spots in the scene, and a lot of times your shots are going to take trial and error, but this is what you're set for. If you find that you're not able to reach your desired setting, you're going to need to either stop down to a smaller aperture like f22, or make sure to see if you can go to a lower ISO. In some cases, the scene is just too bright. I'm going to take my shot, and it's going to go for 15 seconds, and then I've enabled long exposure noise reduction in my camera, and that's going to take an additional 15-second exposure with the shutter closed, and that's going to enable it to remove any noise that might have happened from the long exposure. So when it's all said and done, I'm going to review my image on the histogram, check to see if there's any highlights that are blown out, and if so, I will adjust my exposure accordingly and take the shot. When I'm done, I put the filter back to its minimum setting so that I can go and recompose the next shot.
So there you have the Singh-Ray Vari-N-Duo filter, which you can use to create extremely long exposures and get really interesting effects in moving water, and also a polarizer. I'm Jason Odell, and I'll see you next time.